Why am I getting ads? I've got like 2 ad blocks. Alright, let me know if it's loud enough.
Alright, today we are talking about grinds. So the grind, it's a staple of any MMORPG, whether it's grinding gear, grinding reputations, legendaries, experience, levels, whatever, you name it.
I find this crazy. I'm gonna make a gamble and say that he's probably said, "Oh, I hate Torghast." I bet he's also said, "Oh, I hate island expeditions," because of the grind he had to do back in the day. He's probably someone that thinks the leveling process should be like removed and whatnot. He's probably tweeted about it at some point, like to bin off leveling. Which is also a grind, a staple to an MMORPG. Currently, the game is a fat dungeon, a Mythic Plus dungeon simulator, just spamming instance content and whatnot. Which it doesn't really speak grind to me. It kind of just speaks, I don't know, like fellowship. In a way. Flashback to his first Legion MDO where he lost and called his teammates the N-word in DMs. Are we sure he's not European? Wait, did he actually? Am I? Yeah, let's watch this video.
Ground into the ground, and anything that.
But yeah, no, actually talking about staples of MMORPGs, like, yeah, let's talk about staples. What about the open world? Do we want to talk about stuff that should be done in the open world? Do we want to get more stuff outside of instance content? Seems very important for an MMORPG.
That gives you 0.1% power is something that players like me and like you will automatically flock to just to get that one hit of dopamine, that power increasing dopamine that everybody yearns for. So the grind, that's what we're talking about today. And what grind do we have? One of the most divisive ones in the history of the game. This is the history of artifact power. All right, so artifact power, it starts all the way back in the Legion expansion, and it is a currency.
So, how much has THD paid this man to make this video?
That is exclusively tied to the expansion's artifact weapon system. Each class of specialization received a unique artifact weapon that was obtained via class-specific quest lines on the Broken Isles. These weapons were really cool.
Wait, he makes an appearance? My goat. My hero. He has stood against the world this entire time, and now finally he has an ally on his dark path of bringing back artifact power. Loki, I will say though, I do believe there should be a sort of grind like this. I do think it's good for the game. So long as it's like you're doing fun content for it. Like if you have to spam Mythic Plus for these grinds, then I'm sorry, but it's not fun. It's not fun. According to someone I know, 18s feel like 10s on beta. So basically we're going back to when we had to farm 20s and Blizzard have undone the squish again. And we're going in the never-ending cycle of them squishing it and unsquishing it. That's crazy.
And lore relevant, but that's not part of the scope of what this video aims to talk about. So AP though, it was earned from nearly all in-game activities, such as like world quests, questing, yes, dungeon or raid bosses, rares, treasures, PvP, LFR, M0 swoops, you name it, it granted AP.
I think you said dungeons and raids a couple times there, mate. Just a couple times.
So you ended up earning AP from whatever source. Then it was spent to unlock and rank up traits in a sprawling spec-specific talent tree that was etched into the artifact.
Bro, upgrading the artifact was so cool. I felt this. I loved the system of just making my artifact more powerful and looking forward to cool abilities which they had, or cool passives.
Artifact weapon. These traits would enhance abilities, provide utility, or offer other major power boosts.
I was really hoping that in Remix would have like a very similarly fleshed out system, but instead we got some bland, generic boring stuff. I need to do a video on Remix, like a Final Thoughts video.
And so how it worked was fairly simple. There would be specific abilities or different modifiers that would enhance. There was defensive nodes as well. Like I remember some of the defensive nodes would give you either stamina or it would increase your armor values. Some of the damage boosting nodes would do things like whenever a target is dotted and you have your Starfall out, it does more damage.
Okay, slightly off topic, but what happens? Oh no! Yikes! That is one for the history books. Holy! I struggle to see that how this man said that. I struggle to see it, but yet it's in front of me. But like, no, what I was gonna say is what happened to the era of people wearing headphones? Like, why do people have like, earphones in? That's for your phone, bro. Maybe his headphones are broken. You know, I did it for a time when my headphones were broken, and I was waiting for new ones to arrive. That's sweet warranty. Someone with a better headset? Nah, but it just looks goofy as. Like, what? Like, you're not a real gamer if, when you shave your head bald, you don't have a headset then. It's as simple as that.
Damage from your dots. On top of that as well, there were also artifact weapon abilities. Those were always on use abilities. The AP items, they were right to click, and you would just end up like adding.
Wait, maybe that's it. Yo, I got a theory that he's secretly balding, and he's hiding it with the long hair, and so he's got earphones in instead of headphones. So when he does go bald, he doesn't have the dent. I figured it out. I'm kidding. I know nothing about this, man.
The power to the currently equipped artifact.
Aside
not
from
all
his
three of your
attitude to his
core
teammates, I
artifacts
guess.
that you had for your specific specialization, which is very notable. It was just to your currently equipped one. There was also no daily cap, but the costs on the artifact weapon did scale exponentially. Early traits would cost around 100 AP each. Later ones would end up ballooning all the way up into the millions. Originally,
Yes.
65 million artifact power was the cost for all primary traits, plus a maxed out Paragon point. And by the end of the expansion, this would end up ballooning up to 217 billion for
Yeah,
the rank
the
75
infinite point,
Crucible's
which was
Promise
sick.
achievement.
And it
So like I
became
said earlier,
to a
AP,
point
it was
where it
spec
was just
and weapon
so
specific,
high
so swapping specs or weapons meant that separate progression ended up needing to
that,
happen.
you know, you just wouldn't.
This was a huge
end up getting
problem in
harder.
early on patches. This was
There's one simple way to fix this. You just tie something to your warband, which has the value for how much artifact power you've earned. It's a very simple fix. You attach the script, the variable, which holds the artifact power, not to the weapon, but to the warband, and treat it like a buff, just like you got the XP buff. It's very doable because if they can do the XP buff across your warband, they can do my idea right now. So that when you go on an alt or respec, you have the power to just invest. And I think, you know what? Let alts give an advantage to farming. Like, yo. Make there be a better reason to have alts.
still kind of the era of having a flex healer where this is basically a DPS who would occasionally heal. This was the beginning of the end of the flex healer for most top-end guilds, where you not having a buffed up weapon made you far less powerful than your guild's main healers, and you were committing serious power to that specific weapon whenever you were committing
It
AP
did
to
suck how
This
you
meant
could
that
only
flex healers
play
really died,
whatever
I
you
remember, in
locked
that
in
era
with.
as well. We ended up getting a 5th healer for the first time in my guild's history. This was also relevant from a season-to-season perspective, so say you main
Wait. 5th hit? Bro, I'm on 7.
Frost Mage one season, then Fire was the meta Mage spec the season after. That meant that you were behind a lot of artifact power on your class's weapon. And not having that buffed up weapon was an AP that was just effectively
Okay, it's
gone.
not
It
building.
was just juiced into the ether. So
My
it a
theory
lot
is
of
hella
artifact
wrong.
Power, but there was a way to creep that problem. This was called the Artifact and Knowledge system. What this was is it was a passive multiplier that you researched in your class order hall by using order hall resources, and that exponentially boosts AP gains. For example, in 7.0 at rank 1.
The research system was cringe. They should just let it be, kind of like the current renowned raid system, where you just like clear your weekly content and then get the gain. That'd be so much better. So the knowledge thing was basically just the timer thing. I think you had to get a load of order resources and commit it, and then like a couple days later you would get the modifier applied to your artifact power.
1 artifact knowledge. This was a 25% modifier on artifact power that was gained. Rank 25 was a 25,000% modifier on artifact power gained, and you can kind of see over time how you would end up racking it up fairly quickly. So this was just kind of meant to kind of creep your weapon as fast as possible. Early artifact knowledge, though, that would progress slowly, and it cost multi-day research projects. You would end up getting 2 artifact knowledge levels per week, but there was no catch-up. Personally, this was really grief. I remember finishing leveling in Legion on Saturday because I was busy with college classes. I was perpetually behind 1 artifact knowledge level until everybody hit rank 25 12 and a half weeks into the expansion. So that was very cool and interactive. Additionally, anyone who...
Like, stuff like that is Turbo Dog. Because here's the thing. He still played the entire time. So Blizzard, it's not about, like, keeping people and whatnot. It's not. People will stay. The people you're trying to, like, get hooked and keep playing are quitting anyway. Like, just let them be the catch-up. It ain't that deep. Like, if someone misses a week, let them get, like, double their progress until they caught up. It's just that easy.
Who re-rolled did not receive any artifact power catch-up until patch 7.1.5, which happened 135 days, aka 19 weeks after the expansion launch, meaning that there was a significant amount of time that people would just be perpetually behind. The simplified way of saying all of this is that you would just use artifact power to buff up your specific weapon. Artifact knowledge comes along as inflation to make AP less valuable over time. So week in and week out, players would tend to be within a few levels of one another, and early on in Legion, the weapon points would yield additional major traits for your weapon.
Eventually, everyone balanced out within, well, everyone fully playing balanced out within like 3 levels of the final trait, and I think the same happened with BFA. And I'll be fair to Blizzard, it is a brand new and very complex system for them, so of course they were gonna make horrible mistakes like this. But it's still a goated idea. They just scrapped it way too soon. Like, if they'd continued with it, by now, I reckon they'd have the most goated system.
Some of these could be actually massive damage gains, as high as like 3 to 5% damage gains per point. So for the original...
Wait, hear me out. They're simplifying the classes to bring in more stuff like this, so the complexity comes from the future artifacts. It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
There were 34 traits, as I stated earlier, and then traits from this weapon could be either passive or active, with passive traits usually empowering your regular abilities to some extent. The first point that you would also put into your weapon, that would unlock the artifact ability that I was calling out earlier. Those tended to be some rotational cooldown style ability. There was also some traits with gold and silver borders on them, which those were more impactful than traditional traits. You tended to want to beeline towards those traits. And these traits, they were unlocked, like I said earlier, by spending artifact power. And they could only
Triple
be unlocked if
Inferno.
that was directly connected to that point has also been fully unlocked. And you can see the interconnectivity of these weapons on screen right here. From then on, you needed to visit the Forge in the class hall to be able to purchase a trait. And what purchasing a trait did was it would grant you an additional 0.75% stamina all the way up until that 34-point threshold that I called out earlier. You can actually see that in the top left-hand corner of the artifact weapon in the window. Then, after filling out the main tree, you can put an additional 20 points into the bonus Paragon traits that grants you additional health, healing, or damage. This ranged from a 5 to a 15% damage or healing bonus. So basically the 35th point, that was a 5% damage gain, and then every point subsequently after that was a 0.5% damage gain. And the grind from 35 to 54 for 10% damage, that was utterly insane. I hated doing this. And this is where the Maw of Souls grind, that's where that came into play. It was by far the most efficient AP grind, and it was this very simple...
See, this is where I see the problem. When you got dungeons being the best thing, and it's just spamming, like, really menial content, or even just like it's just spamming the exact same thing over and over again. That's where it doesn't get fun. There should be variety. There should be encouragement to go for variety. You had the old emissary quests where you had to do 4 world quests for a faction, which were pretty good. I remember. I do think if there were more content forms, like having a daily quest, be like, oh, go do a vision, go do an island expedition, go do Torghast, go do a dungeon, go do a raid, go do an arena, go do a raid battleground. Like, having quests to do everything, like, each week or something, or every day, or whatever they decide, would be much better, and those quests be way better than anything spammable. If you get something like Maw of Souls, which is hella spammable, like, you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Nerf for dungeon games. There's already 2 dungeon
simple strategy where you just 3-chested Mythic Plus dungeons, because they gave you bonus AP per chest that you had spawn. That's where the 3 chests actually came from.
Yeah,
because you
was
would end up
crazy.
getting multiple chests depending on how far under the timer you were. So now Maw of Souls, it was a 24-minute timer. It's the shortest Mythic Plus dungeon in World of Warcraft history. This meant that it had the best AP per hour.
And this group
and
still
that
failed
was
at
best AP per hour
+5?
just to spam Maw of Souls for artifact power. And it's a bit mind-numbing. But if I only knew what was yet to come in BFA with Island Expeditions, I would maybe been a little bit more happy to do Maw of Souls. So now this was actually one of the few times.
Yeah,
that I
Island Expeditions they messed up on, because they wanted it to be a more spammable form of content, but you had to do it too often. And it was another case of you have to, rather than there being options.
Game, funnily enough. The grind from 34 to 54. So for context, and I remember this very vividly,
They need to
I needed to
constantly
do 10
tune it
Maw
if
of
they would
Souls
bring us
runs
back.
per day over the entirety of my college winter break. 25 days of 10 Maw of Souls runs per day. Slamming 250 Mythic Plus runs in 4 weeks, no matter if they were 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever. It was unbelievably unfun. I also do remember watching a bunch of streamers at
Yeah. Now, I will keep it real. Doing that amount of Mythic Plus over the entire season is also unfun.
this time. They hit the Your Key My Carry. I remember this is where JB actually started to get pretty big in streaming. He had a lot of runs with him and Shakib that was Your Key My Carry, where they just ran down Maw of Souls. Nonetheless, this made me really consider quitting the game since I was actually doing my Maw of Souls grind solo. I had recently joined a new guild with 0 friends, and I was basically tasked with doing this grind, and it was very overwhelming because I was basically just pugging it in LFG. So I almost quit.
See, this right here is exactly how weekly Mythic Plus vault filling feels for me. Even though I own a guild and I know so many people, I'm always bugging it. I live in the UK. I get off work at 5 and I get on not long after, and everyone on the continent is eating dinner. They're done eating dinner when it's like getting to a point where it's like, well, I can't do a key now because I've got my dinner soon. And so I go and have my dinner and I come back and all the Europeans are in a group and I've got no one to join, so I have to go and pug. Because I don't know many for UK players. Simple as. There's like no one that I know or have ever played with that's had like even a similar schedule to me. So yeah, like Mythic Plus in the evenings, even when I had like the entire day free to play the game, I could never get groups of people I know. It's only if they just happen to have someone in their group be tired and quit early for the night that I'd be able to get in. And even then, sometimes I just find other people because I was mid-key and whatnot. But that right there perfectly sums up how current Mythic Plus vault filling feels for me, and I'm sure plenty of other players in WoW. So unfun. How you think I feel when we're pushing Boston? You got to try Cap Crest before raid on a Wednesday reset. before raid. You finish work at 4 and need to eat. Yeah, that's terrible. That's honestly so unfun. Like raid nights in early season feel so stressful. Just like you get off work, you gotta get on, play keys, have dinner, and then get to raid. It's so stress. It's so stress. All I want to do is raid. I don't want to do these stupid ass dungeons. And on top of that, now I've got to sort out rosters every single day.
But clearly I'm still addicted and still here to this day, so you know how that story ended up turning out. I didn't quit. So my story aside, that was the most of the artifact power situation from the very beginning of the
That story is so true.
There was a weapon that had 54
scenarios.
traits with exponential increasing currency. There was power creep in the form of artifact knowledge. Some of those traits were interactive, some were not, depending on what your weapon did. If you tried to play multiple specs, it was terrible. There was a huge issue with both legendaries and the weapon. That was a problem that did not.
Like I say, easy fix. Hide a variable to the warband.
That was damn near the first 8 months or so of the expansion, and we didn't get changes until 7.2. So 7.2 comes out, and things change pretty significantly. Artifact knowledge is no longer gained via work orders from the order hall. Now you're just given artifact knowledge levels on a per week basis. This is smart. Additionally, Blizzard sunsets the Paragon traits that almost made me quit the game due to the grind. And then they added a new grindable Paragon trait. The new trait in question, it was the Concordance of the Legion Fall. So Concordance of the Legion Fall, it was different than the 0.5% damage that was gained on a per point basis on the Paragon traits. Instead, Concordance of the Legion Fall was an RPPM proc that gave you main stat based on how many points you had in your weapon. Each point in the weapon and the Concordance of the Legion Fall proc gave you incremental amounts more main stats.
Did anyone max this out?
It was not even close to as impactful as the 0.5% DPS from those previous Paragon points. Doing research on this, I also found a video of Preach in Legion to jog my memory on how all of this worked and how players felt about Concordance of the Legion Fall. He did a great job of summarizing what was wrong with the Paragon points and what was different about Concordance of the Legion Fall. First and foremost, Paragon points were required and tuned around the concept of you having those 54 points in Nighthold, so not having them was a huge deal. So that kind of was the issue with the 54 points and the Paragon points. Secondly, Concordance points would now be far less powerful and more expensive. This meant that there was no more Maw of Souls grinding to get more AP, and the entirety of the player base would be closer to...
I think though if they do this, then like topping it off should make you pretty damn OP. Like to the point where you'd have to have the grind be justifiable to a point where like it would make CE quite a bit easier. I mean, you'd still have to go and, you know, do all the mechanics that go with it, but like your character would have to get so juiced in order to make this worth it. And like, I mean, people already care about world rank for cutting edge and whatnot, so I don't think that making your character so overpowered that it does make C more attainable for the vast majority of the population would be a bad thing, because people will still talk about world rank and go off of there. And I think these boss fights are on mythic difficulty definitely something that's should be experienced by more people. But yeah, personally, I see a case where it'd be worth bringing it back. And so like, it's not mandatory for you to like juice yourself super high to get CE. But it's still something that's like good to do, and in the lower end guilds, it ends up being a pretty huge boost for them, and it actually helps them get across the finish line. I could see that being good. I think they have to make sure though that like a system like this is deactivated in PvP. You can't have it in PvP. It'd be ridiculous.
Together just in terms of actual power. And on top of that as well, most concordance points would be gained passively via brute force from your artifact knowledge gains. The Concordance of Legion Fall is also an infinite grind, whereas the Paragon points were a finite amount of points / AP, so you kind of had the end in sight, meaning that you were just like going for the entire grind. All this was to basically mean that Blizzard did not want you to run out of things to grind, AP to gain, whatever. They also didn't want you to see the end in sight. Legion was kind of this way where you were always on the treadmill with Titan Forging and AP. I remember Asmongold kind of called it the hamster wheel. And I think that was pretty fair given this current.
Oh, that clip! That is still one of the WoW clips of all time. Holy.
Constantly chasing BIS gear, BIS power gains, that kind of thing. And Concordance was just a toned down version of this, though, where you didn't really feel required to do a pretty lengthy grind just to get caught up to your peers, but there was still a grind to be had if you wanted to go forward with it. Now in Legion, we continued on with Concordance of the Legion Fall throughout the rest of the expansion. There was no new flashy weapon traits, no insanely weird grindable Paragon points, and that's kind of where AP ends up ending in Legion. Blizzard does end up coming out with this new system called the Netherlight Crucible. If you remember this system, you're a real one. Basically what it gave you was additional weapon relic traits, but it had very little to do with your AP. With 7.3 as well, Blizzard also just auto-set the entire player base at 75 for Concordance of the Legion Fall, just to start the patch. That's when you unlock the Netherlight Crucible. Blizzard also did eventually fix artifact knowledge as well, where you auto-gained the artifact knowledge over time as opposed to having...
Yo, Loki, I'm thinking back on the PvP thing, like, just in general. They should have sort of something like the Netherlight Crucible, where it's really finite and not too bad to grind, but it's got to be forced into the core of the game, like doing the storyline, doing trying out some of the main I don't know, maybe they make some scenarios or whatnot for you to play out, which should get you another trait, something that forces players to actually play the core of what World of Warcraft is, rather than just spamming arenas, battlegrounds, raids, dungeons, prey systems, visions, whatever the hell, island expeditions. More stuff in the open world and whatnot, and like actual tied to the game story. Because I feel like way too many people skip it, and it makes WoW feel like a very shallow game. And when people are like just talking to their friends about WoW, it just sounds hella dead. It really does. When I see other people explain WoW, it's like the most industrial thing ever. It feels like a factory process, the way they describe it. It doesn't do the game justice.
To turn in work orders, like I mentioned earlier, and there was insane catch-up associated with this fix to the artifact knowledge. At the same time, the goal for artifact power was a lot more simple than it was in early Legion.
Also, hear me out. Give us stuff like in Legion invasion points, or the contributing to the Legion full buildings and whatnot, being like an open world contribution thing that leads to a sort of mini campaign that happens. Like, just let stuff like that be running all the time. That'd be way more interesting.
So this is where Chapter 2 comes in. Champion, they're mining Azerite from the world's open wounds. Put a stop to it.
No. Champion! Someone in this cave is mining Azerite from the world's open wounds. Put a stop to it. Bit more passion.
While Legion was still a little bit half-baked, and with mixed results from the artifact power system in mind, Blizzard started development on Battle for Azeroth, the expansion to come after.
The Heart of Azeroth was so much worse because it was just generic across every class. There was no heart put into it, ironically enough. It was just like, oh, borrowed power of Azerite. Oh. Okay. I shoot out a meme beam of Azeroth's energy. As a rogue? As a rogue? What? What does this meme beam have to do with me as a rogue?
And taking what they learned from artifact power, they created their brand new system, Azerite power. AP once more. At the forefront of BFA, there was the Heart of Azeroth artifact. Moving away from class and
Those
spec-specific
abilities were
artifact weapons
so
of Legion,
boring.
you got a universal necklace for everyone to wear, similar to the legendary rings and Warlords of Draenor. This was better because you didn't commit all of your artifact power to a specific weapon, which had a bunch of different problems. Now, the Heart of Azeroth,
But like I say, the individual weapons itself was a fine concept. All they had to do was just think about where they store the variable which held your power. It's that simple. Like, you still had the same problem with the Heart of Azeroth. With like, okay, now you can play the other specs of your class, but you still can't play an ult. No, 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 you're not ulting. You reroll. Gotta wait for the next season.
it would increase in power and eye level the more Azerite power you ended up managed to put it into it via world quests, raids, dungeon, the mission table, war fronts, and island expeditions. Banger content. World quests were the best AP per hour, but the obvious problem is that world quests, they have a finite amount of how many you can do. So the definite best source to grind out your Azerite power was through the brand new system, Island Expeditions. And that was one of the new key endgame features.
They should have made the PvP islands be more, like, appealing.
Advertised for the expansion. Island Expeditions came with 4 difficulties: normal, heroic, mythic, and PvP. The premise is that you would land on an island, kill monsters or enemy players to be able to obtain Azerite with the amount needed depending on the difficulty. Now this feature is generally...
Like, they should have made PvP give double the rewards of mythic. Because it's like, no one wanted to do them. No one did.
remembered with a pretty sour taste in players' mouths, since you were forced to mindlessly grind this feature if you ever wanted to become as powerful as possible. And with it, the rewards from Island Expeditions, they were just a little bit too RNG to be satisfying. I'm talking like the mounts and stuff like that. In Island Expeditions, they were generally seen as just a giant power farmer. I do remember some heroic weeks or patch launches where we would just speed run Mythic Island Expeditions, trying to get them down to 3 minutes. I also vividly remember there also being these nuclear missiles that you would purchase with doubloons, and you would just run 2 tanks, gather the entire island, drop triple nuke, bang, collect your AP, and get out of the island in 3 minutes. God, islands are so bad. It was definitely less enjoyable than Maw of Souls. Oh my god, they were so bad. Not even sure if it was better than Torghast. Like, that, holy shit, Island Expeditions were bad. Anyway,
I don't even think they're that bad though. I just think it's the fact that you had to mindlessly grind it for so long. I think if they put a cap on it or something, then it'd be more fun. Or if there was just a gradual drop off which happened, which would mean other content would end up giving more Azerite, then it'd be so much better. But I think that's the thing they gotta do with like everything. Anything spammable, they need to have it so it's like, it starts off being pretty good, and then the more you do it, the rewards deprecate. And so, like, you're not forced to do other content. You could still spam islands if you want to, but other content is going to give you more. And by diversifying what you play, you can still choose to do the content that you find more fun and more enjoyable. But you know, if you dabble into a bit of everything, then you're going to get the most optimal gains possible.
Level you end up putting in your Heart of Azeroth, that increased its item level by 2, giving you just basically a bunch more secondary stats and primary stat on the necklace. After the release of 8.1, the Champions of Azeroth reputation was account-wide, and so the Champions of Azeroth reputation that you ended up getting from the 8.0 Heart of Azeroth level that you were able to get, that stuff all became account-wide, and the Champions of Azeroth rep was pretty much null and void. BFA, this was also the expansion where War Mode was added, and that gave players a way to opt into World PvP, which...
Can we just remember the fact that Alliance permanently got to have 30% increased Azerite because of this? Like, honestly, it was so cringe. I think they still have the 30% bonus, even though I'm fairly certain they're the dominant faction.
Which would end up giving you more Azerite power from world quests. So basically everybody...
I genuinely call bull on them being the lesser population. I don't think that's true. Like, literally every war mode phase I see, is Alliance dominated, and it's been that way since BFA. Like, the only times I see a Horde dominated one is when there's an established Crate Farm war group on the phase, and even then, they only get half the zones because an alliance group has taken the other half.
Played with war mode on during BFA. And similarly to what happened in Legion with the artifact power, the amount of Azerite power that you needed to be able to get an additional level on your HOA necklace, that scaled exponentially the higher level it got. So with this, the first 10 levels were about 1,000 Azerite power each, and later levels would end up scaling into the millions. However, like in Legion where you had artifact knowledge that would increase the number of artifact power you earned, BFA featured a similar system with a few key differences. Rather than reaching the gigantic numbers with the amount of Azerite that was required, like artifact power had, instead it was reduced each week for the Heart of Azeroth level. This allowed players that were just returning or leveling alts to get their Heart of Azeroth up to a competitive level fairly quickly. Think of this as like the inverse of artifact knowledge, and it was account-wide. And now for the first couple of seasons...
I'm gonna be honest, that's not that bad though, because like, generally, like, having the catch-up but still having the grind is good. And if you're a couple levels behind, you can still play all the content. Like, you're still going to be able to do everything. I just think, in general, they need to make sure, like, something like this is not involved in PvP. Because otherwise, no one's going to want to do PvP. Like, you're just going to have that one sweaty nerd who's been farming 24/7 since the season launched, and we're on, like, week 13 of the season. Who's going to one-shot you?
Seasons of the expansion, the scaling with the HOA necklace, that was the main thing. What it was intended to do was actually scale up your Azerite gear. This was meant as a replacement for tier sets. These pieces would come in head, shoulders, and chest slots, and they would feature certain spec or role-specific Azerite traits. These were not as cool as tier sets, by the way. When they were first announced at BlizzCon, the gameplay of these was pretty exaggerated, as most just turned out to be passives or stat sticks or random procs that did not interact with your class whatsoever. When you end up shift right-clicking a piece of Azerite armor, you'd also see a couple of rings, and the rings depended on the item on the piece.
It cost way too much to respec these. It was an insane amount of gold.
Letting you choose a trait depending on the type of ring. And early on in BFA as well, unlocking a new ring actually ended up depending on the item level of your Heart of Azeroth necklace. This ended up not mattering as the expansion went on, but early on that was a pretty big deal of getting those breakpoints for those Azerite pieces. So for the start of the expansion, this capped out at 4 rings, and this was later scaled to 5 with the release of Season 2 and the Battle of Dazar'alor raid. After Season 2, the outermost 5th ring also featured spec traits depending on your character. The 4th ring contained both spec traits and default traits depending on where you acquired the piece. The 3rd ring, that had role-based traits depending on what role your class was. The 2nd ring had defensive and utility traits, and the middle always had the Azerite empowered trait, meaning basically nothing. And it increased the item levels, the piece's item level by 5, but everybody had that active. On top of this, if you ended up locking in a trait, you were not able to change them on the fly. You basically had to go and visit a reforger to even be able to get a new selection on these pieces. And
Didn't take long before it
either
cost like
Borealis or
100K.
Dazar'alor, depending on your faction. Reforging these Azerite traits, and this is the thing that I remember the most about them, they cost
so
gold,
expensive.
and it became exponentially more expensive with each reforge. It would end up doubling the cost. The base price started at 5 gold, but it quickly scaled to be super expensive.
It was
And
so bad.
originally in the original patch, it would only get scaled down every 72 hours, and so if you ended up wanting to reforge your gear more frequently than every 72 hours, you would end up...
This was terrible if you
incurring
played multiple
exponential
forms of
costs.
content as well.
I remember paying 135,000 gold at some point to be able to
Same.
reforge my gear because I was bouncing between Mythic Plus and Raid.
I don't
and the
think it was
traits that were
135.
good weren't the same traits, although the pieces of gear, the Azerite pieces
I
of
played
gear
M
that I
plus
had
raids and
were
PvP.
bits for both content. But at the same time, it
I spent
wasn't the
so much gold.
same traits that were good on those rings. It was different traits on those rings. That eventually ended up getting nerfed to where
Crushing
it
a
halved
soul.
every 24 hours as opposed to
What a
72
trait that
hours.
was, though.
The 72-hour halving
Gold
of
Seal Hot
the
Blood.
cost was just
Played Warrior back then.
unsustainable. I remember somebody in Method ended up paying like 1 million gold to be able to reforge their pieces of gear because they were
It's
jumping between
disgraceful
like
it can cost
Holy
that
and
much.
Disc from memory. So this is definitely one of those things that if you want to play multiple roles or multiple different game modes, you better make sure you have gold to back it up. People alternatively just got different sets of Azerite gear, and that was kind of their preferred way of interacting with the system. As for acquisition, this system, kind of similar to the Legion legendaries that came before it, you had mixed feelings about it since you could get an unlucky and drop an Azerite armor piece that did not include your best traits. The traits were static. They weren't like RNG as to what was etched into the piece, but this kind of meant that you were seeking out specific pieces from specific bosses or dungeons.
Oh
and
no, just like any
no
gear
great vault,
to ever
and
exist.
it kind of meant that you were just praying that your weekly Mythic Plus or PvP chest contained the exact Azurite piece you wanted out of the entire pool of gear that you were hoping to get. I remember, like, personally, the Beast Mastery Hunter and Balance Druid Azurite
I do still
pieces
remember
that
there
were
being
missed
interesting
in terms of
trait
like
builds,
secondary
though.
and primary traits. They were all from PvP.
Well, I know
so I needed
Arms
to be able to
had
get to
2
2100
trait
arena
builds,
rating every
I
single
believe.
season to get my Beast
One was
Azurite
Crushing
pieces.
Assault, and the
good
other
news,
was
Blizzard heard your cries about how
something
RNG was
which is a bit more
unfun in
consistent.
Season 1 of BFA. Thus, in the middle of the first patch, they allowed you to buy new pieces with the currency Titan Residuum. This
That
is
was
what we called
such a
chalk at the
needed
time,
addition.
And you acquired it from either scrapping Azurite pieces of armor or completing treasure map missions obtained from island expeditions. Now, it did take a lot of chalk to be able to buy highest item level, you know, whatever the Myth Track equivalent pieces.
They should have
were.
had that from the
It took
get-go
a
after
bunch
Legion
of scrapping
Legendaries,
of
though.
Azurite, but Azurite did end up going to people with the intention of scrapping from time to time because there was just so much of it that ended up dropping. You also ended up getting some Titan Residuum from your Mythic Plus chest on reset, with the number scaling based on the highest keystone level that you did that week, going all the way up to 10. Oh, it didn't go all the way up, but it, you know, went up some. God, this is embarrassing. There was even an incident where Ivus the Forest Lord in Darkshore had no loot lockout, and he essentially became infinitely farmable. The world boss had a chance to drop Azurite
Classic
armor,
Blizzard,
which could be scrapped
bug.
for Titan Residual, but I think you can see where this is going. This resulted in players abusing the hell out of this world boss, spending hours killing him for gear to turn into this chalk, and Blizzard responding and issuing suspensions for people who
No! That is so typical of Blizzard. They mess up, you get banned. Like, no, just revert them and hold your hands up, Blizzard. It's so cringe.
abusing this bug, leading to my entire guild at the time getting a 7-day ban, with some players ended up getting a 30-day ban. Hashtag free Tettles. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so that was like early on in the expansion. For the release of 8.2, Najatar, the Eternal Palace, then we got Azurite Essences, and this is where AP really comes into play. AP
This is when I
before
came back to the game.
Not really doing much. You're just upgrading your necklace. You're getting additional secondary stats. However, in 8.2,
I've taken a break and
AP is
I
way
missed
different.
the Zara Law.
AP is now present to
All did was
upgrade your
shit.
essences.
I had exams coming up, and so I took a break, and I missed out on the one raid I wish I fucking played. I really wish I played the Zara Law.
And increase the item level on your necklace to get you some essence traits. So you finish a quest line, you establish your main hub in Najatar, you unlock the ability to be able to equip an essence inside of your Heart of Azeroth after completing that quest.
Najatar was something sick.
And with certain breakpoints, depending on your HOA level, it would allow you to add powers to that necklace. These powers, they were called essences. Each essence came with a major and a minor ability. In the Heart of Azeroth interface, you were able to choose at least one major power and 2 minor powers, increasing with the additional minor power. And in Season 4, you ended up getting an additional minor power on top
Mean
of that.
beam!
The major powers tended to be active abilities, while the minor powers were more passive. At the same time, the major powers were things that you would be playing around fairly heavily, even if they weren't an active ability. The essences themselves,
The only
they
thing
have
is,
4
like, they
ranks.
felt really unfun, and they just felt really odd, and it just didn't feel right for the class I was playing, you know? Like, I don't care about playing WoW for a trinket, I care about, like, the class I'm on. And so summoning all this bright Azurite on, like, Warlocks and whatnot, it just, it don't feel right.
The first 3 ended up increasing power, and the 4th rank, they would serve as like a cosmetic change, meant that it was like this legendary looking thing and would make it more flashy, glowy, giving it a unique visual, that kind of thing. And each essence came with different requirements for how you obtained them. Some, like Conflict and Strife, that was gained via honor from arenas in PvP. Players were not happy about this because it was
That was
also
just
a
rating.
best in slot minor power for pretty much all specs in PvE due to how much versatility it gave you. It was also
I find it so funny though, and it was kind of a goated thing. Like, yo, you want to be the best in your game mode? Yeah, you got to do the other game modes. Like, low key, that's goated. I'm all
a
for
decent
it.
pick as a major essence for a spec like Protection Warrior, since it would make
You
your
can still get
Thunderclap
away
move
without using it
targets
as well and do
and
pretty
proc
well.
the minor powers versatility bonus whenever you.
No, why you click? No, stop clicking. No, you even have keybinds.
Applied crowd control to an enemy. This meant in Mythic Plus, players were, I remember the first pull of Tortogor, Protection Warriors would run around in circles, circle kiting the entire beach of crabs, just spam rooting them over and over again, never allowing them to contact them. Blood of the Enemy Major, I remember this was a super good essence for some specs in PvE, particularly like Outlaw Rogue and Havoc Demon Hunter. Really liked Blood of the Enemy.
Warrior as well.
Now the requirements to obtain it though, it was tied to Honor via Battlegrounds. This led to players mindlessly farming Comp Stomp matches in order to obtain it. Shout out Dratnos' 12-hour Comp Stomp farm streams during this era. So to level up your essence power,
They should have made it so that Comp Stomp wouldn't have given you any honor, and everyone would have had to play Battlegrounds. That'd have been so much better.
first, you had to keep doing the content that the essence was obtained in. And so if you wanted essences that were obtained from PvP, you had to continue doing PvP. At this point as well, I also remember players spending hours farming island expeditions to hit level 60 on their Heart of Azeroth for rank 3 Crucible of Flame. This was a huge damage spike, going from rank 2 to rank 3 Crucible of Flame during that Ashara patch. It was a big deal. You can look back on some of the world first kills of Queen Ashara, and you see most of the raiders having their Heart of Azeroth neck at level 60, while some absolute gaming demons managed to level it all the way up to 62. Shout out THD. And the value of these essences, they vary between specializations, with some specs having their BIS power be regular stat procs, while others like Fire Mage, they became insanely powerful with their BIS major power. Fire Mage loved Memory of Lucid Dreams, and it paired with the Bracers from Mechagon, both improving the recharge rate of their Fire Blast. It made their Ignite absolutely insane. So essences,
wait, this guy played the game?
Attached to your Heart of Azeroth.
I thought it just out of the back.
Whenever you leveled up your Heart of Azeroth, and AP kind of existed to just give you
I thought it just vibed the cup
stats
shit, you know?
on your necklace, but also allow you the ability to be able to unlock these minor powers going all the way up to 65. 65 actually wasn't that hard to obtain. So with the release of 8.3, Blizzard added 7 new essences to the game, requiring you to either finish questlines for the patch, collect and combine items for the Ny'alotha raid, reputation farms, horrific vision runs, whatever it may be.
One of the biggest problems there as well is you then brought in another grind for the legendary cloak and corruptions and whatnot, and it was just grind on top of grind.
But at the same time, whenever essences
much.
were there, while present in BFA, the impact of AP farming significantly diminished. Basically, after that THD Island Expedition 60 grind that was so present for those Race to World First guilds, AP grinding basically died after that. Aside from that one time that I farmed Island Expeditions consistently for that 1 week, AP grinding in BFA was fairly passive and something that you just kind of did via World Quest swoops once a week for the Paragon caches. The power gained from AP was also significantly lower, so the feeling of needing to actually grind AP in BFA was significantly reduced as well. This kind of ended up leading Blizzard to remove grindable currencies going into Shadowlands, leaving us nothing really to grind endlessly for power. So AP, it had its highs, it had its lows. At the same time,
Yeah,
AP did
then you
give
had
a reason to log
Torghast,
in
which
each
was
and every
a
single
very
day.
small,
But at the same
finite
time,
grind,
World
which
of Warcraft has kind of moved in a very different
felt
direction.
rough and
Gone are the
boring.
days where WoW is the only video game you play and you only have time for. Now video games are far more seasonal typically, World of Warcraft kind of included, and it's
Yeah.
pretty frequent for players to take patches off and jump in and out kind of on a whim. This is something that AP is really bad about being difficult to do.
No one's committed to WoW anymore. Absolutely no one is committed to WoW. And you see this right now in Guild at the moment. No one's online. We're a Race to World Blast guild, and there's nothing for us to grind to help us overcome the last boss. We're just here mindlessly hitting a big bloober until he eventually falls over. It's kind of boring. It's not a good way to keep people playing.
Because if you jump out, it makes it even more difficult to kind of just jump back into the game. Personally, I didn't really enjoy AP farming that much, and that Preach video that I was looking at earlier for the Concordance of Legionfall stuff that I cited, a lot of people in his comment section were saying that they were going to be quitting based off of artifact power farming. But at the same time, the benefits are also understandable. Now, here's the time where we pose the question. Is AP in either iteration, either Legion or BFA, good to bring back? It's
How it
pretty
was?
clear that
No.
it has its pros and cons. And to
It'd have
conclude
to
this
be
video,
reworked heavily.
let's ask the most outspoken pro AP advocate around his thoughts. EHD Lock. All right, thank you for doing this. I'm making a video about AP. I knew that I had to get you on to give your pro AP stance.
I mean, that's right.
So for you, I got a question. So I've seen a lot of comments and posts about players hating both Azerite and Artifact Power, people who actually threatened to quit whenever that content was current over the system itself. What do you actually think makes a grindable currency good? And do you think there's actually anything that makes it bad?
So I think things that make it bad are when it restricts other specs and when it's not account-wide.
Yes.
And that was the major gripe with...
That's literally the only problem with it, really. Don't want to be committed to one game, to be honest. The thing is, though, I don't think you will be. It'll be the same as, like, with Path of Exile. You grind to a certain point, and then you're done. You hit your goals, and then you're done. Like, you'll be getting your CE, and then from there, you're probably not going to be, like, you might be farming your turbo boost, mid-season. But then that would be the only real major grind you're doing, and you're just doing, re-clears at that point. Because you can do it. Like, what's the point of you farming even higher? You've already done the content. So you don't need to be committed to the game. Even though there is more for you to do, to grind for more power, you don't need all that extra power. Like, once you got the kill, you got the kill. As simple as that.
With, like, the Legion one, for sure. And with the BFA one, it was the account-wide part. Right? Because they fixed the spec problem in BFA, but not the account-wide part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, I think it's just a better system, in my opinion, to have your character be better than to have an arbitrary raid buff.
Yes.
Into the patch.
It's so true. Like, the current Renown raid buff stuff is, like, super boring. I don't feel like I'm getting stronger. I just feel like the content I'm doing is soft nerfed. Whereas at least with the artifacts, it felt like I was becoming more powerful. And it felt like the ARPG feeling of where you're progressing your character and, like, going god mode sort of thing. Like with, the thingy, I've been progressing the Dark Pact build in the last League of PoE. Like with Diablo, how you farm Paragon levels. Like, even though as well it's also an infinite grind, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're satisfied and you won't do more. And you can stop. Like, okay, some players will be like, oh, you need to do this, and, like, yeah. Honestly, yeah, it's like, some of the big artifact traits in Legion kind of felt like getting a headhunter in PoE. Like, when you got 3 mini Infernals alongside your big Infernals, Destruction Warlock, that trait, that was juicy. That felt so good. Infernal was, like, one of the most feared cooldowns in existence as well. Like, I remember, in Arena, all everyone said is, when Infernal was out, just kite. Just run away and kite. Like, you ain't staying out at that point. It's the Warlock's Arena at that point. You run, you kite, or say goodbye. Went from constantly dying clear to 15 maps in 3 minutes. Yeah, it's nuts. That's just some of the fun of these power creeps. And even still though, like, you aren't still playing PoE this league. You got yourself to a point where you were satisfied with your character, you reached goals you wanted to achieve, and then you were done. And I think with Artifact Power being back in WoW, it would be the same boat.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I think that generally, as the season progresses, your character should just generally become stronger.
You should also be rewarded for doing more things outside of just going into raids.
in some way that is tied to your character and not just like you zone into the raid, you do 15% more damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also saw you grind to level 60 on your Heart of Azeroth prior to Eternal Pass. You actually got to 62, which is crazy.
That's right.
For the Crucible.
And like doing something like that, I think should be rewarded. Like if you turbo grind, you put in a load of effort, then yeah, you should get a reward. While it does mean like the sweaty no-lifes or people who play well for a job are of course gonna have a fat advantage. And I do think eventually a catch-up should be in place. So it's not a permanent advantage. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that. Could have just used that character to farm currency to juice a different child to do bossing. Just didn't want to. Yeah, but that's the thing though. You reached the goal, like you reached certain goals, you became satisfied, and that was that. Like sure, you could have done more, but you didn't have to. And that's the sort of situation you'd want WoW to be in. Because right now in WoW, if I log on, there's no point to be like doing Mythic Plus. Not that I'd want to do any more Mythic Plus. I'm so burnt out of that. There's no point to me farming visions. There's no point to me like going in the open world at all. Like, realistically, what can I do? I could push rating in Mythic Plus. I could push rating in PvP, either in RPGs or arenas, and I can wait until my next raid starts. Maybe I can sit and analyze logs until the next raid, but like, there's nothing I can do to actually play the game for the next raid. Well, it's very clear goals for you though. I mean, PoE will get the same though. Like, my goals for PoE are get my 14 league challenges done, and I'll get them done. GG. I don't even have to do all the Uber bosses and whatnot, and I don't care about farming like hundreds of divines or getting mirrors and whatnot. But some other people do. It's the same like in WoW. I don't care about getting a high world rank. I just care about getting CE and getting some arena racing. That's what interests me. I don't even care about getting a 3k Mythic Plus mount. I don't. Though, I'm sure someone's gonna force me to get it over the next couple of weeks, but I don't.
Of Flame Miner Essence, is AP kind of the villain of alts? Or do you think it just needs to be
Passing's
something that
so
is
dumb.
fully account-wide, kind of like you were
I think another good thing about AP is it will shatter passing culture a bit more. Like, yes, there'll be sweats who keep grinding out to try and get the top passes, but a lot more people will just realize, well, passing's just absolute farce and just dumb.
sharing.
I think it just needs to be. I mean, you have the warband system now, right? So you could for sure do something like that where it wouldn't be as insanely cringe.
Okay.
Because like that was the major gripe, was like you just have to farm it on one guy, and if you come in late in the patch, it's doomed.
Dude, Legion, you came in 3 patches late and it was doomed. Like it was
Yeah.
completely over. All right, any final thoughts on AP?
No, that's pretty much my thoughts. Like, you know, if you have it like as a seasonal thing where like you farm some AP, and it like I view it a lot as like, do you remember?
That's another good point though. When a new season starts, everyone should be on a level playing field. Otherwise, no one's gonna want to come and play a new season.
Like the corruption cap going up in the final patch of BFA,
Yeah.
like that felt good, didn't it? Like that felt pretty good when that corruption cap went up and you got to equip more corruption.
There was no BLP for a while with that, though.
Okay, but that's a different problem, right? But like the concept of
Sure.
that going up throughout the patch, and
It's
then
not wrong.
you just
They were good concepts that made you feel more powerful as an individual. And it felt good. It did.
your character becomes stronger versus just an arbitrary buff.
Okay, that's fair. I think I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I
Definitely
just
makes
don't
sense.
like the way they do the arbitrary buff now versus the way they did the arbitrary buff before.
Like like that is the turbo boost is like the AP.
Yeah, like a
farming.
turbo boost could be the AP stuff, you know, or you could have like, I mean, even then, like you could have like the Legion remix tree. I didn't get to mess around with it too much, but there was like those like trees and stuff.
Mhm.
You could have more effects like that are tied to your character than just you do 5%.
It's true, But it's got to be like stuff that actually feels for your spec. I don't want another Heart of Azeroth. I don't want another Legion Remix artifact. I want an extension of my spec. If they brought back an AP type system, it would be time gated. 100% yes. Blizzard would still use it as a way to keep you addicted and playing throughout the season. But they're gonna try and do that no matter what. And I'd rather they do it with AP than like annoying content to do like Mythic Plus. Better to do it with a grind rather than a slog. But even so, I don't think they should do it at all. I think they should look at how ARPGs progression systems go and do it that way. Like, I think it was great if, like, end of BFA, you had your Heart of Azeroth, and it was like, the thing that put everyone on the same sort of level was the fact that the next few levels were insane grinds to achieve. So most people were just like, yeah, I'm satisfied with this level, and it's good enough to be able to clear raids and whatnot and do everything I want to do. And no one was expected to really go for these super high levels. It was just a minor gain for hella effort. But you'd still be rewarded for that effort. But yeah, it's like the same with PoE. Like, you can upgrade your gear to get a tiny bit of extra DPS, but it's costing like 200 divines. So do you really want to grind with that? Better to not gate it at all. I do agree.
More damage in the raid.
Alright.
It's just, in my opinion, better.
Thank you so much, THD, for coming on and giving your pro AP opinion.
That's right.
What's his opinion? Hey, yo. That was kind of a good video, though, not gonna lie. That was a pretty good video. Yeah, I enjoyed giving that one a watch. I think, yeah, there's definitely a point where you can get AP back. But Blizzard just needs to... I really do think if they look at how these sorts of grinds are done in Path of Exile, even Diablo 3, their own game, then they can actually do a good job of it.